He was a trillionaire, one of the richest men alive. But that morning, he lost something that no amount of money could easily replace. It could have cost him everything, and yet, the person who found it was a homeless, pregnant woman who had nothing, not a roof over her head, not a warm meal waiting for her, not even a safe place to sleep. She found what he lost, and she gave it back, every single thing, without touching a cent. She did not know who he was. She did not know what he was worth. She only knew what was right. Why would a woman with so little do something so honest? And how would that one quiet act of goodness change both of their lives forever? Sit back, make yourself comfortable, and follow the story of how a trillionaire discovered that the most genuine heart he had ever encountered belonged to a woman the world had completely forgotten. This is the story of Maya and Damien, two strangers, two worlds, one moment that rewrote everything. If you believe kindness and honesty still exist in this world, like this video and share it with someone who needs hope today. And don't forget to subscribe. In the crowded, noisy city of Crestfield, where tall buildings cast long shadows over narrow streets, there lived a young woman named Maya. She was 26 years old, but if you looked into her eyes, you would think she had lived 2 lifetimes already. Her eyes were dark and quiet, the kind of eyes that have seen too much too soon, that have learned to hold pain without letting it spill over. Every single morning, Maya woke up before the sun. She would slowly sit up from the flat piece of cardboard she slept on beneath the old Harrow Bridge on the south side of Crestfield. She would fold the thin, worn blanket that she shared with her 2 younger siblings, run her fingers through her hair, tie it back with a piece of cord, and begin the day. There was no alarm clock. There was no warm kitchen. There was no coffee waiting. There was only the cold morning air, the sound of distant traffic, and the weight of another day beginning. Maya was 7 months pregnant. Her belly was full and round, pressing against the front of the oversized shirt she wore, a man's shirt, 2 sizes too big, that someone had left in a donation box outside a church 3 months ago. She had taken it gratefully, washed it in the river, dried it on a fence, and worn it every day since. Beneath it, she wore a pair of loose cotton trousers with a fraying hem. Her shoes were old canvas sneakers, split slightly at the left toe, held together with a strip of tape she had found near a repair shop. But Maya never complained, not once, not out loud. She moved through the world quietly and steadily, carrying her pregnancy the same way she carried everything else, with her back straight and her chin up, even when her feet ached, even when her lower back throbbed, even when the baby kicked hard in the middle of the night and she lay awake under the bridge with her hand pressed to her belly, whispering soft words to the child she had not yet met. "You were going to be okay," she would whisper in the dark. "I promise you, little one, I am going to make sure you're okay." She said it not only for the baby's sake, she said it for her own, because some nights it was the only thing that kept her going. How Maya got here. Maya had not always lived under a bridge. There had been a time, years ago, when she had a home, a small one, but real. 4 walls, a roof, a kitchen table, a door that locked. When she was just 15 years old, her parents, her father Joseph and her mother Ruth, died in a terrible accident. A large truck had lost control on the highway and hit a minibus they were traveling in on their way back from visiting relatives in the countryside. They never made it home. The police came to the door. Neighbors gathered outside, and Maya, who had been watching her younger siblings that evening, found herself suddenly standing in the doorway of a house that no longer felt like a home, holding 9-year-old Eli's hand with one hand and 7-year-old Nora's hand with the other. No relatives came to take them in.
No family members appeared to offer help. Some distant cousins sent messages of condolence, but offered nothing more. And so, at 15 years old, Maya became the head of her small, broken family. She became the mother, the father, the provider, and the protector, all at once, all alone. She dropped out of school. She had no choice. She started selling small bags of roasted peanuts near the bus stop on Linden Street, waking up at 4 in the morning to roast them over a small coal stove before the morning commuters arrived. She earned barely enough to buy bread and a small tin of sardines each day, but she kept going. She always kept going. Over the years, she found different work, washing dishes at a small restaurant, cleaning offices late at night, helping a market woman carry and arrange goods early weekday mornings. She kept Eli and Nora in school as long as she could. She made sure they had shoes. She made sure they had something to eat every day, even if she herself went without. Then, 4 years ago, she met a man named Darius. He was kind at first, attentive, warm, full of promises. He told her she was special. He told her she was strong. He told her that he wanted to take care of her and the children. Maya had never had someone say those words to her before, and she believed them with her whole heart. But Darius lied. He was already married. He had a family in another part of the city. When Maya discovered she was pregnant, she went to tell him the news, only to arrive at his door and find a woman there who introduced herself as his wife. The truth hit Maya like a wall of cold water. Darius never came back after that. He disappeared completely, leaving no forwarding address, no phone number, nothing. 2 months later, their landlord raised the rent by 40%. Maya could not pay. She begged for more time. She offered to clean the building in exchange for reduced rent, but the landlord was unmoved. 3 weeks after the first missed payment, he arrived with 2 men who stacked her belongings on the pavement outside her door. The door was locked behind her. That night, Maya and the children slept on a bench in Crestfield Park. Then they found the bridge, and the bridge became their home. But even there, even under that cold concrete arch, surrounded by the sound of river water and a rumble of traffic above, Maya refused to stop hoping. Every evening, when Eli and Nora had fallen asleep beside her, she would sit up and stare out to the dark water and whisper the same quiet words. One day, things will change. One day, we will have a real home. One day, this will all be behind us. She did not know, she could not have known, that the change she had been whispering about for so long was only days away, and that it would begin with something as small and ordinary as a fallen wallet.
On the other side of Crestfield, in a quiet, gated neighborhood where the streets were wide and clean and lined with tall trees, lived a man named Damian Cross. He was 32 years old, lean and tall, with the kind of calm face that made people think he was always thinking about something important. His name appeared in the financial press regularly. His company, Cross Global Properties, had developed major real estate projects on 4 continents. He was consistently listed among the wealthiest individuals in the world, and the figure attached to his name had 11 digits. Damian Cross was, by any measure, a trillionaire. But you would never know it to look at him on a regular day. He owned no flashy jewelry. He drove himself rather than being driven. His clothing on any given morning might consist of plain dark jeans, a simple gray or white t-shirt, and a pair of clean leather trainers. When he went out in the city without his assistant or any security detail, he wore a cap pulled low, and he looked like any other young professional heading out for errands. He preferred it that way. Damian had grown up watching people perform wealth, the big parties, the loud cars, the constant need to be seen and admired. He had never wanted any of that. His mother, a quiet and deeply principled woman named Eleanor, had raised him to understand that what a person truly is has very little to do with what they own. The way you treat the people this world ignores, she used to tell him, That is who you are, Damien. Not your account balance, not your company name. You, the real you, shows up when no one is watching and when nothing is in it for you. Her words had settled into him deeply, the way good things do when they are planted young and watered often. He still heard her voice whenever he was about to make a choice. Despite his success and his wealth, Damien was, in many ways, a lonely man. He had surrounded himself with capable people, managers, advisors, architects, lawyers, but very few of them were people he genuinely trusted. He had dated several women over the years. Some were remarkable in their own right, intelligent, accomplished, beautiful, but in each relationship, something had eventually revealed itself that he could not overlook. The slightly too careful attention when he mentioned a new project, the way a conversation would subtly drift toward money or investments or what his next acquisition might be. The way some women changed, became softer, more agreeable, more strategically warm the moment they understood the full extent of what he was worth. He was not bitter about it. He understood it, but he was tired of it. "I want someone real," he said once to his closest friend, Marcus, during a quiet dinner. "Someone who would treat me the same way if I had absolutely nothing. Someone who is good, not because it benefits them, but because that's simply who they are." Marcus had laughed gently. "Good luck finding that in this city," he had said. Damien had smiled, but the smile hadn't quite reached his eyes. He was still looking. Damien had been based abroad for the better part of a decade, managing his international operations from offices in Geneva and Singapore, traveling constantly between time zones, living out of hotels and company apartments. But 8 months ago, he had decided to come back to Crestfield for an extended stay. He wanted to reconnect with the city. He wanted to inspect some of his local developments personally, and he wanted, more than anything, to simply stop, to breathe, to be still for a while. He leased a modest house in a quiet part of town, modest by his standards, which meant it was large and beautifully furnished by any other measure, but it had no staff living on the premises, no gateman calling ahead to announce his arrival, no household full of people. Just him, a cleaning service that came twice a week, and the kind of quiet he had forgotten he needed. On a Thursday morning in October, Damien woke up with no meetings scheduled. His calendar was, for once, empty until the afternoon. He stretched, made himself a cup of black coffee, stood at the kitchen window watching the light change over the back garden, and decided to take a slow morning. "Today," he said to himself quietly, "I'm just a regular person." He pulled on gray jeans, a plain white t-shirt, and a dark baseball cap. He picked up his car keys, not the keys to the sleek black company car his assistant always arranged, but to his own personal vehicle, a simple dark blue SUV that he had bought second-hand precisely because he liked how unremarkable it was. He slipped his wallet, a slim leather one, old and slightly worn at the corners, into the back pocket of his jeans, grabbed his phone, and headed out. His plan was simple. He would stop at the Creston Square shopping center to pick up a few personal items, and then drive over to one of his development sites on the east side to check on the progress of a residential building his team was constructing. 2 quiet, ordinary tasks, nothing complicated, just a morning spent being a person instead of a CEO. Creston Square Shopping Center was busy even at 9 in the morning. Families with strollers, office workers grabbing breakfast items, elderly couples moving slowly through the wide aisles. Damien moved through the store comfortably, a small basket in hand. He picked up a box of herbal tea, a jar of honey, some fruit, toothpaste, a tube of hand cream his mother had asked him to get, and a few bottles of sparkling water. At the checkout, he paid with his card, the wallet coming out, the card sliding through, the wallet going back into his rear pocket. A simple transaction, done 1,000 times before. He picked up his bag, smiled briefly at the cashier, a young woman named Sandra with a bright blue lanyard, and walked out through the automatic doors into the cool morning air. The car park was about 40 meters from the entrance. Damien walked slowly, no rush, reading a message on his phone. And somewhere along those 40 meters, in the space between the shopping center entrance and his car,
His wallet slipped silently from his back pocket. He did not feel it go. The pocket was deep enough to hold it upright, and the wallet was thin enough that when it tilted and fell, it made almost no sound. It landed flat on the smooth pavement, face down, tucked slightly against the base of a concrete bollard at the edge of the car park. Damien reached his car, unlocked it, placed his shopping bag on the passenger seat, and settled in behind the wheel. He opened one of the water bottles and drank slowly, checking his messages. He put the car in gear after a few minutes and drove out of the car park, completely at ease, completely unaware of what he had left behind. Inside that wallet, his national identity card, his international driving license, 3 credit cards, one linked to a business account with a very high limit, one personal card, one emergency card used only when abroad, a folded receipt from a restaurant in Singapore, a small photograph of his mother taken at Christmas 2 years ago, a handwritten note from his grandmother that he had carried for years without reading less than once a week, and $4,200 in cash, a mix of notes he had not yet exchanged after his last trip overseas. Everything he needed, everything that identified him, everything in a slim black rectangle lying quietly on the Creston Square pavement. That same morning, Maya had woken Eli and Nora early. The night before, she had counted the small amount of money she had saved over the past 2 weeks, coins mostly, a few small notes, from collecting and selling recyclable bottles around the city. She had enough for a small loaf of bread, a tin of baked beans, and a carton of juice for the children. She wanted to stop at the shops before Eli went to the community learning center he attended on Thursday mornings. She helped Nora into her jacket, a pink one with a missing button that Maya had sewn shut with a safety pin, and fixed Eli's collar. Then the 3 of them walked the 40 minutes from the bridge to Creston Square, Maya moving slowly but steadily, one hand sometimes pressed to the base of her spine where the ache lived these days, the other hand holding Nora's. They went inside, bought what they needed. Maya counted the coins carefully at the checkout, aware of every penny, placing each one deliberately. The cashier, Sandra, who had served her minutes before, had come to stand nearby. She looked at Maya carefully. Then she said in a voice that was soft and slightly odd, "You're a good person." Maya shook her head. "I'm just doing what anyone should do." She placed the wallet on the counter and turned to go. "Wait," said the desk attendant. "Your name? Can I take your name, in case the owner wants to contact you?" Maya paused at the door. Maya. Just Maya. And then she walked out with her children, her small bag of groceries pressed to her chest, back into the ordinary morning.
Damien drove east toward his development site, music playing quietly, the morning feeling relaxed and unhurried. He stopped at a fuel station about 10 minutes from Creston Square. A young attendant approached. "Good morning, sir. Full tank?" "Yes, please," said Damien. "I'll pay by card." He reached back for his wallet. His hand found flat denim. He frowned and tried the other back pocket. Nothing. He checked the front pockets, phone on the left, keys on the right. He leaned forward and checked the center console, the glove compartment, the space beside the seat. He turned around and looked in the back. Nothing. His jaw tightened. "Give me a moment," he told the attendant, his voice controlled, but his mind moving fast. He thought back carefully. He had definitely had it at the checkout. He remembered the card going in, the card coming out, the wallet returning to his pocket. He had walked to the car, put the bag down, sat in the seat, opened the water, checked his phone. At no point had he taken the wallet out again. It must have fallen. The car park. It had to be the car park. "I'm sorry," he told the attendant. "I need to come back." He put the car in reverse, pulled out of the station, and drove back toward Creston Square, faster now, the relaxed feeling of the morning entirely gone, replaced by a tight and urgent focus. Inside that wallet was not just cash,
There were identity documents. There were cards that, if found by the wrong person, could cause enormous problems. There were things that could not simply be replaced with a phone call. He thought himself saying under his breath, "Please, let it still be there. Please let whoever found it be honest." He pulled into Creston Square, parked quickly, and walked fast toward the entrance. He went straight to the customer service desk. "Excuse me," he said. "I was here about an hour ago. I think I dropped my wallet in the car park. Has anyone brought anything in?" The woman at the desk looked at him carefully. "Your name, sir?" "Damien Cross." The woman's expression changed. She reached beneath the counter and set a slim black wallet on the surface between them. Damien exhaled. "A young woman brought this in about 40 minutes ago," the desk attendant said. "She said she found it near the bollard in the car park. She said she hadn't taken anything. She said to make sure the owner got everything back." Damien picked up the wallet and opened it. He checked each compartment, each slot, each fold. Every card was there, the cash was there, all of it, every note, in the same order it had been before. The photograph of his mother, his grandmother's handwritten note, everything. He stood very still for a moment. Then he looked up. "Who was she, the woman who brought this in?" "She said her name was Maya, just Maya. She was young, maybe mid-20s. She was pregnant, very pregnant. She had 2 children with her, a boy and a girl. She tried calling the number on your business card, but couldn't get through on the international line." Damien absorbed each detail quietly. "She was homeless," said Sandra, the cashier, who had come to stand nearby. Her voice was gentle but direct. "I served her just before she found the wallet. She counted out her coins one by one to buy bread and juice for the children. And then she found that wallet with all that money, and she brought it straight back." There was a silence. Damien looked at Sandra, then at the desk attendant, then back down at the wallet in his hands. "Did she leave a number?" he asked. "No," said the desk attendant. "She didn't want to leave a number. She just left the wallet and walked out." Damien set the wallet down on the counter, took a business card from inside it, and wrote his personal cell number on the back. He handed it to the desk attendant. "If she comes back," he said quietly but firmly, "please give her this. Tell her I would very much like to thank her properly. Tell her to call me." He paused. "And please, make sure you remember her face." He left a generous sum of money with both women as a thank you for keeping the wallet safe. Then he walked back to his car and sat in it for several minutes without starting the engine. He thought about what Sandra had said. Homeless, pregnant, counting coins for bread, found thousands of dollars and walked straight to the counter to return it. He shook his head slowly. He had met people with far more than she had who would not have done the same. He had worked with executives who cut corners without blinking. He had known people in positions of trust who helped themselves to far less than what had just been handed to him without a second thought. And this woman, this pregnant, homeless woman with nothing, had returned everything. "Maya," he said quietly to himself, the name sitting strangely in his mouth. Just Maya. He started the engine, but his mind stayed behind. That evening, Damien sat alone in his living room. The lights were low, the television was on but muted. He had eaten something earlier, he could not remember exactly what, and now he was just sitting, one ankle crossed over the other knee, his phone resting in his palm. He should have felt relieved. He had his wallet back, his documents were safe, his cards were intact. The whole incident had resolved itself with surprisingly little disruption to his morning. He should have moved on by now. But he couldn't. He kept seeing her the way Sandra described her. Pregnant, 2 small children beside her, coins on the checkout counter, and then the wallet, all that money found and returned without hesitation. "Who does that?" he said aloud to the empty room. He had spent years trying to determine whether the people around him were genuine. He had built complex internal tests for it. watching how people behaved when they thought he wasn't paying attention, noting who was warm to the staff and who wasn't, seeing who asked for things and who simply worked. He had been disappointed more than he had not been. And here was someone he had never met, someone with nothing, someone for whom that wallet could have meant the difference between survival and a crisis, and she had given it back, completely, immediately, without leaving her name or waiting to be thanked. He sat there for a long time. Then he went to bed, but he did not sleep quickly. He lay in the dark thinking about a woman named Maya who slept under a bridge with her 2 younger siblings and a baby on the way, who had chosen honesty over survival and who had walked out of a shopping center without even looking back.
3 weeks passed. October gave way to November, and the mornings grew colder. Maya and the children had moved from the bridge to a spot slightly more sheltered, a covered alcove behind a community church on Farrell Street, where the minister had given them quiet permission to sleep as long as they were gone before the 7 o'clock morning service. It was not much, but it was drier than the bridge, and the minister's wife sometimes left a small bag of food near the door before they arrived each evening. Maya had been picking up extra work where she could, carrying deliveries for a nearby provisions store for small daily pay, helping a seamstress on Mondays and Wednesdays, sorting fabric and threading needles, collecting bottles for the recycling center on Fridays. Her back ached constantly now. The baby was dropping lower, and the midwife at the community health outreach she had attended once had said the birth was likely no more than 6 or 7 weeks away. She tried not to think too hard about what that meant, giving birth with nowhere to go, no money, no preparation. She focused instead on the next day, always just the next day. On a Saturday morning, Nora was coughing again. Maya used the last of her money to buy cough syrup from the chemist on the corner. Then she walked to Creston Square with both children to buy a small amount of groceries, her weekly attempt to stock up on anything they could eat without needing to cook. She had completely forgotten about the wallet. She had returned it and walked away, and filed it in the part of her mind where she kept things that were over and done. It had been the right thing to do. She had done it. That was that. So when she walked through the doors of Creston Square and began moving toward the fruit section, she was not thinking about Damien Cross or wallets or any of it. She was thinking about whether the bread was on offer this week and whether Eli's shoes could last another month. Excuse me, miss." Maya turned. Sandra, the cashier, was hurrying toward her from behind the checkout counter, waving her hand. "It's you. You're the woman who returned the wallet." Maya blinks. "Yes," she said slowly. "That was me." Sandra was almost breathless. "I've been hoping you'd come back. Please, wait here a moment." She disappeared behind the counter and came back holding a small, cream-colored card. "The man whose wallet you returned, he came back that same day. He left this for you. He wrote his personal number on the back. He said he would very much like to thank you properly." Maya looked at the card. Her eyes traced the name printed on the front. Damien Cross. On the back, in neat, firm handwriting, a number, and below it, 3 words. "Please call me." Her chest did something odd and quiet. She tucked the card carefully into the inner pocket of her bag, right beside the zip where she kept her small identification paper. "Thank you," she said to Sandra. "He seemed very genuine, very serious about it. I don't think he's the sort of person who forgets." Maya nodded. She finished her shopping. On the walk home, back to the covered alcove, back to the folded blanket and the cardboard floor, she kept her hand near her bag, aware of the card inside, aware of the number written in neat, careful script. That evening, once Eli and Nora were asleep, she sat up and took the card out. She held it in the light from a distant street lamp. She had a phone, a battered old handset that still received calls and could sometimes make them when the network cooperated. She'd been given it by a woman at a community outreach center 6 months ago. Its screen was cracked across the lower right corner and the battery died unpredictably, but it worked. She looked at the number for a long time. Then she set the card down on top of her bag, lay back carefully, pulled the blanket over herself, and placed her hand on her belly. "Tomorrow," she whispered. "I'll call tomorrow."
The next morning, Maya woke up determined. She sat up, reached for the card, and stopped. Her bag was where she had left it, but the inner pocket was open. She checked it. She checked every compartment. She shook the bag gently, looked inside it, looked around the space on the ground nearby. The card was gone. "Nora," she said quietly, trying to keep her voice steady. "Nora, love, did you go into my bag last night?" Nora looked up with wide, guileless eyes. "I was looking for a pen, for my drawing. I found a little card. I thought it was rubbish. I threw it in the bin outside." Maya closed her eyes for a moment. Then she stood up and walked to the large municipal bin at the edge of the alley. She lifted the lid. The bin had already been emptied. The collection lorry must have come in the early hours. She stood there with the lid in her hand and looked into the empty bin for a long time. Then she set the lid back down carefully, turned around, and walked back to where the children were waiting. "It's all right," she said. "It's all right, Nora." And she put her arm around her little sister and held her close, more for her own sake than for Nora's. She thought about going back to the shopping center to ask Sandra for the number again. She thought about it for 2 full days, but every time she was ready to go, something small stopped her. The fear of seeming desperate, the fear of appearing as though she had returned the wallet only for the reward, the fear of what she would say and how she would explain the lost card without sounding careless. In the end, she did not go. She told herself that if it was meant to happen, it would happen, and she tried very hard to believe it.
2 days after that, Damien was driving across the city toward the east side, toward the construction site of a new development project his company was building, a set of affordable residential units that had been something of a passion project for him, his way of putting something real and useful into the city he had grown up in. He was driving along a quieter stretch of road, cutting through a residential neighborhood rather than taking the main route, when he noticed an old woman sitting alone by the side of the road. She was seated on an upturned crate beside a small wooden table. A few plantains and a small bunch of bananas were arranged on the table, but her head was down against her chest, and her hands lay still in her lap. She was either sleeping or very unwell. Damien slowed without fully thinking about it. He looked at her as he drew level. Something about the shape of her, the line of her shoulders, the particular way she held her head, even in sleep, reached into a closed room in his memory and opened it. He pulled over, stepped out, walked toward her slowly. She was old, perhaps 70. Perhaps older. Her clothes were clean but thin. Her feet, in old flat sandals, were swollen at the ankles. On the ground beside the crate was a small cloth bundle, all of what she owned, if Damien had to guess. "Auntie," he said softly. "Auntie Grace." Her head lifted slowly, her eyes opened, brown and cloudy at the edges with age, and she looked at him with the careful confusion of someone waking up somewhere they don't quite feel safe. "Who is it?" she asked, her voice thin. "Who's there?" "It's Damien," he said. He crouched down in front of her. "Damien Cross. You worked for my parents for many years. You used to come to our house on Millfield Road when I was a boy. You used to make groundnut soup on Sundays, and you always saved the biggest bowl for me even when I hadn't finished my afternoon chores." There was a silence. The old woman stared at him, and then something in her face changed, shifted from confusion to recognition to disbelief, all in the space of a few seconds, and her hands came up to cover her mouth. "Little Damien?" she breathed. "That small boy? You were that child?" "That's me," said Damien, and he smiled at her. She reached out and gripped both of his hands. Her grip was stronger than he expected. Tears moved down the lines of her face. "God is faithful," she said. "God is so faithful. I carried you on my back when you were sick. I sat outside your door when you had fever. And look at you. God has made you tall." "Auntie Grace," Damien said gently, keeping hold of her hands.
Tell me why you were sitting here. Tell me what happened." She told him. It came out slowly, in pieces, the way old pain tends to come, not in a clean line, but in sections, some sharp and some blurred with time. After his parents had emigrated and the house on Millfield Road had been sold, she used her savings to set up a small provisions shop. It had done well at first. Then the neighborhood changed. Rents rose. The larger supermarkets came and drew customers away. Her stock began to spoil faster than she could sell it. She fell behind on the rent. She begged for extensions. The landlords refused them. She came in one Monday to find the lock changed and her remaining goods stacked on the pavement. She had moved into a room in a shared house, kept selling small things, fruit, ground nuts, phone credit, on the street. One night, coming back late from the market, she had been robbed. Her phone, her money, her key. The woman who rented her the room grew impatient. She was put out again. And eventually she had ended up here, sleeping where she could, selling what little she could gather each day, too proud to beg and too old to do the heavy work she once could. By the time she finished talking, Damien's jaw was set and his eyes were very still. "You will not spend another night outside," he said. "Come with me." He helped her to her feet, helped her into the car, and drove her to his home. He gave her a clean room with a proper bed, warm food, a hot bath, and fresh clothes from a nearby shop that he ordered to be delivered within the hour. She sat at his kitchen table eating rice and stew with a sort of focused silence that suggested she had not eaten properly in some time. Later, when she had rested, he sat across from her with tea. "Auntie Grace," said Damien, "I'm going to build you a house. Your own house, not large, but solid. 4 bedrooms so you have space for family if they come. A garden, safe walls. I'm going to put it on a plot I own on the west side. It's a quiet area, good neighbors. My construction team will start within the week." The old woman put her cup down. She looked at him for a long time. Then she said, "Your mother raised you right. She raised you so right." He looked at the table. "I'm trying, Auntie. I'm still trying." True to his word, Damien had his construction team begin work on Auntie Grace's house within days. The plot he chose was on a pleasant, tree-lined street on Crestfield's west side, not far from a park and a small primary school. The design was simple but well built. Solid foundations, thick walls, proper waterproofing, good ventilation. He visited the site regularly, checking the progress with a keen eye, making sure the quality of work matched what he had instructed. Then, on a bright but cool Tuesday morning, Damien arrived at the site a little after 8. The frame of the building was up. The roofing had begun. Workers moved efficiently across the scaffolding and through the ground level, carrying materials, mixing cement, calling out measurements to each other. Then he turned around to head back to where he had parked, and he stopped. A woman was moving across the far side of the site, carrying a large concrete block balanced on a folded cloth pad on her head. She was walking steadily, her body adjusted perfectly for the weight, her eyes fixed ahead. She was very pregnant. Her clothes were dusty. Her shoes, taped at the toe, were the shoes of someone who could not afford to replace them. Damien went completely still. He watched her for a moment, the way she moved, the line of her shoulders, the particular way she held her head even in sleep, reached into a closed room in his memory and opened it. He walked forward. He got closer. She still hadn't seen him. She was focused on where she was going, navigating the uneven ground carefully. "Maya," he called. She stopped. She turned slowly with the block still on her head and looked at him with the same calm, searching steadiness she had looked with everything with. "You are working here?" he asked, though the answer was obvious. "Since 2 weeks ago," she said. "The foreman at the provisions store where I used to do deliveries knows the site manager here. He got me a few days of work, carrying materials, cleaning up at the end of the day. It pays enough for food." Damien looked at her belly. Maya, you're almost 8 months pregnant. You're carrying concrete blocks. I know how pregnant I am, she said, not sharply, just simply, stating a fact. He looked away for a moment, pressing his lips together. Then he looked back at her. I've been looking for you, he said. Since the day you returned the wallet, I've been hoping you'd come back to the shopping center. Sandra, the cashier, she gave you my card. She did, Maya said. I lost it. My little sister thought it was rubbish. By the time I realized it was gone, I thought about coming back to ask Sandra again, but she stopped. But what? He asked quietly. I didn't want you to think I was looking for a reward. I returned it because it was the right thing to do, not for anything else. Damien looked at her for a long time. Something in his face that was usually carefully arranged became slightly undone. Just briefly, then he said, I know that. That's exactly why I've been trying to find you. He gestured towards a quieter corner of the site, away from the main flow of activity. Can we talk for a few minutes, please? Just a few minutes. She considered it. Then she nodded.
They stood in the relative quiet of the site's edge, near a low wall that would eventually be the boundary of the garden. The noise of the work continued behind them, muffled slightly by distance. That wallet, Damien began, had $4,200 in it, my international license, 3 cards, one of which has no personal spending limit, my national ID, a letter from my grandmother, a photograph of my mother. All of it, every single thing came back. Maya was quiet. The cashier told me you counted coins that morning to buy bread for your children, that you're homeless, that you found thousands of dollars and handed them in without hesitating. He paused. I've done business with some of the wealthiest people in the world. I've had people in positions of trust betray me for far less. I've watched people who had everything reach for more because they could. And you, he stopped. You had less than nothing, and you did the right thing. It wasn't mine to keep, Maya said simply. I know, but that's the point. Most people in your position would have found a reason, would have told themselves they needed it more, would have taken at least something. He looked at her directly. You didn't even take one note. Maya said nothing. She looked out across the construction site. I want to help you. Not because I owe you, although I do owe you a thank you that words don't quite cover. I want to help you because I think you're the kind of person who deserves something better than what you have, and I'm in a position to help make that happen, if you'll let me. Maya was quiet for a long time. The baby moved inside her, a slow rolling that she felt from one side of her belly to the other. She pressed her hand there, a brief, unconscious gesture of comfort. What does help mean? What are you actually offering? He appreciated the directness. Safe housing for you and the children, prenatal care for you, properly, with a doctor, a place to bring the baby home to, something stable so you can figure out what comes next without standing on a building site carrying blocks while 8 months pregnant. I don't take charity, she said. Her voice was flat and clear. Good, he said. Neither do I give it. Think of it as a start. You help yourself, which you have clearly been doing your whole life. I just make the starting conditions less impossible. He paused. And before you say anything else, I'm not doing this because I expect something from you. I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. Your words, I believe, not so long ago. There was the briefest hint of something in the corner of Maya's mouth. Not quite a smile, but close. Damien reached into his pocket and took out his phone. He handed it to her. Type your number in here, he said, and this time I'll have it, not you. She took it with both hands, typed carefully, handed it back. He called her number from his phone. Now you have mine, he said. He reached inside the pocket of his hoodie and took out a plain envelope. He held it out toward her.
She looked at it but didn't take it immediately. For you and the children, for now, for food and immediate needs, there's no condition on it. She took it. She didn't open it. She held it against her side. I still want to finish my shift, she said. He nodded. Then finish your shift, but no more carrying blocks. I'll speak to the site manager. There's other work you can do here, sorting materials, checking inventory lists against the delivery records. It's cleaner, it's indoors, and it pays the same. He looked at her. Is that acceptable? She thought about it for a moment, then, yes, that's acceptable. Good, he said. He held out his hand. She looked at it, then she shook it, brief and firm. Damien, he said before letting go, what's your surname? Adaze. Maya Adaze. Damien Cross, though you already know that from the business card. Both of them. This time she did smile, just slightly, just for a second, but it was real. In the days that followed, Damien moved quietly and efficiently the way he did everything that mattered to him. He arranged for Maya and the children to move into a clean, furnished flat in a safe part of Crestfield, a 2-bedroom apartment above a laundrette on a quiet street with a small park at the end. It wasn't grand, but it was warm. It had locks on the doors. It had a proper bed for Nora, a fold-out cot for Eli, and a bedroom for Maya with a window that looked out over the park. The night they moved in, Maya put Nora and Eli to bed in the small second bedroom, turned off the light, and then went and stood in the middle of her own room for a long time. She didn't sit down. She just stood there, one hand on her belly, and looked at the 4 walls around her. Real walls. A ceiling that didn't leak. A door she could close. She had not had this in a long time. She sat down on the edge of the bed, and for the first time in many months, she cried. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, with her hands in her lap and her head bowed, tears moving down her face in the particular way of tears that have been held back for far too long. She cried for everything she had carried, for the parents she had lost, for the years of going without, for the man who had left her, for the nights under the bridge with the children pressed against her sides, for the fear she had held so tightly for so long. And she cried, perhaps most of all, for the fact that she had kept going, that she had not broken, not even when she had come very close, and somehow, something had changed. After a while, she stopped crying. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. She laid back on the bed, slowly, with the particular care of a woman in late pregnancy, and she placed both hands flat on her belly. We're inside now, she whispered to the baby. You're going to come into a real home. You're going to have a bed and a ceiling and a door. I promised you, and I kept my promise. The baby moved, a slow, rolling shift, like something settling. Maya closed her eyes.
Over the following weeks, Damien and Maya talked more. He arranged for her to see a proper obstetrician, a woman named Dr. Priya Osei, who ran a private practice in the north of the city. Maya went to 2 appointments before she realized that the practice was supported by Cross Global Properties Charitable Foundation. She said nothing about it, but she noted it. He called to check on her twice a week, not to hover. He was careful not to hover, sensing that she valued her space and her self-sufficiency deeply, but to ask how the children were, whether the flat was comfortable, whether she needed anything. She appreciated the calls for their shortness as much as their content. He did not linger. He did not over-explain. He said what he needed to say, and let her speak and listened when she did. She told him things, slowly, over several calls, about her parents, about the years of selling ground nuts and washing clothes and surviving on almost nothing, about Eli and Nora and how they were the reason she had never fully given up. He listened without interrupting. He didn't say he was sorry in a way that sounded performed. He said, "You must have been tired so many times." And she said yes, and that was enough. He told her things too, about his grandmother, whose handwritten note he still carried in his wallet.
about the loneliness of his position, the difficulty of knowing who to trust, the way that money changed the air in a room, the way people stopped being fully themselves around him, about his mother, Eleanor, who was everything good about him, distilled into a human being. "She would like you," he said once. "She would like you very much." "You don't know me that well yet," Maya said. "I know enough," he said. Neither of them said anything about what this was, whether it was friendship, whether it was something else, whether it was moving toward anything. They were both careful people in their different ways. Maya, because she had learned that the world was not always what it appeared, and Damien, because he had learned the same thing from a different direction. They moved at the pace that honesty sets, which is slower than excitement, but steadier than hope. Eli decided very quickly that he liked Damien. On the second occasion Damien came by the flat, Eli had shown him a drawing he was working on, a detailed map of an imaginary city, complete with road names and a railway line and a small airport. Damien had sat down at the kitchen table and studied it seriously, asking questions about the design choices, nodding at the answers, suggesting a harbor on the west side. They had spent 40 minutes on the map. When Damien left, Eli told Maya, "He's good. He takes things seriously." Nora was more cautious. She watched Damien from a careful distance for the first few visits, evaluating him with a particular thoroughness of a small child who had learned not to trust quickly. But on the fourth visit, she brought him a picture she had drawn, a house with a garden and a blue door and a family of stick figures standing outside it, and placed it on the table in front of him without a word. He picked it up and looked at it for a long time. "This is a good house," he said. "I like the blue door." Nora nodded very seriously. "Blue is the safest color," she told him. After that, she no longer watched him from across the room. The house Damien had commissioned for Aunt Grace was completed in 9 weeks. He drove her to see it on a Thursday morning in late November, the sky pale and clean, the air carrying the particular freshness of early winter. When she stepped out of the car and saw it, solid and clean and new, with a small garden at the front and a proper gate and 4 bedrooms and white walls and a blue roof, she stood very still for a long time. Then she sat down on the front step and put her face in her hands. Damien sat beside her and said nothing. He let her cry for as long as she needed to. When she eventually lifted her head, her face was wet and her eyes were red, and she looked at him with an expression that required no words at all. He put his arm around her shoulder, and she leaned against him, the way a person leans against something they trust fully. "You are your mother's child. You are every good thing Eleanor put into you grown tall. I learned from watching her, and from watching you. You were good to us, Auntie Grace. You were good when it would have been easy to be otherwise. That doesn't go unnoticed, not really, not in the end." She patted his hand. They sat on the front step of the new house for a while longer, in the cool morning air, saying very little and needing to say very little, before going inside to see the rooms. The morning, everything changed again. Maya's baby was born on a Wednesday morning in the first week of December, just as the sun was coming up over Crestfield. It had started the night before, slowly at first, then with increasing urgency. Eli called Damien from the flat's landline because Maya's phone had died mid-charge. Damien arrived within 20 minutes in the early hours of the morning. He drove Maya to the hospital, where Dr. Osei had arranged a room. He waited outside with Eli and Nora, Eli very quiet and still, Nora asleep across 2 chairs with her jacket over her like a blanket. At 20 minutes past 6 in the morning, Dr. Osei came out and said, "She's done. You can go in." Damien looked at Eli. Eli looked at Damien. "Go, both of you. Go meet your nephew, or niece." Eli gently shook Nora awake, and they went in together. Damien sat down in the waiting room. He rested his elbows on his knees and his face in his hands and sat quietly for a moment. He thought about the morning 2 months ago when he had walked out of Creston Square Shopping Center and dropped his wallet on the pavement. He thought about how close it had come to going differently. If a different person had found it, if Maya had been someone else, someone who would let desperation win. He thought about what he might have missed. 20 minutes later, a nurse came to find him. "Mr. Cross, she's asking for you." He went in. Maya was sitting up in the hospital bed, slightly pale, slightly undone in the way of someone who has just done the hardest work imaginable and come out the other side. Eli sat in the chair beside her, Nora stood at the edge of the bed, and Maya was holding something small and wrapped in white, a newborn, dark-haired, eyes closed, chest rising and falling with the steady, miraculous rhythm of new life. She looked up when Damien came in. There was something different in her expression. Something that had been held very carefully back for a very long time had come to the surface, and it made her face look younger, softer, more open than she had ever seen it. "It's a girl," she said. "A girl," he repeated. He came to stand at the side of the bed, looking down at the baby. The baby's hand, no bigger than a coin, was curled outside the white wrap. "What are you going to call her?" he asked. Maya looked down at her daughter for a moment. "Hope," she said. "Her name is Hope." Damien was quiet. "That's exactly right."
The morning after returning the wallet, Maya went about her usual routine. She walked Eli to the community center, bought a small cup of porridge from the woman at the corner of Farrell Street, then sat on a low wall near the river while Nora played beside her. She was not thinking about the wallet anymore. She had done what she did. It was behind her. She pressed her hands to her belly and watched the river and thought about the baby and tried not to think about the things she still had no answers for. 3 days later, Eli came running back from the community center holding a crumpled newspaper someone had left on a chair. He spread it on the wall beside her. It was the business section, and there, in a small photograph at the top right corner of the page, was a face Maya recognized. The same calm eyes, the same unremarkable clothing. The headline read, "Cross Global Properties announces third quarter results," and below the photograph, Damien Cross, founder and CEO, net worth estimated at $1.4 trillion. Maya stared at the photograph for a long time. Then she looked up at the river. "Did you know?" Eli asked quietly. "No," she said. "I had no idea." "Does it change anything?" he asked. Maya thought about it carefully, the way she thought about everything that mattered. Then she folded the newspaper and handed it back to Eli. "No," she said. "It does not change anything. It was still the right thing to do." Eli nodded slowly, then, "But Mama Maya, a trillionaire in this city, and he talked to us?" Maya stood up, one hand on her back. "He talked to us," she agreed, "and we talked to him, and all of it was real. That is what matters." She started walking. After a few steps, she stopped and looked back. "Do not tell Nora the number. She will be impossible." Eli laughed, a real laugh, the kind he did not always have reason to make, and for a moment, standing on the pavement in the pale autumn sun with her brother laughing beside her, and her baby moving gently inside her, Maya felt something she had almost forgotten the feeling of. She felt light. The first real conversation Damien and Maya had, the one where they stopped being polite and started being honest, happened on a Tuesday evening about 3 weeks after she and the children had moved into the flat. Damien came by to drop off some drafting paper that Eli had asked him to find for his maps. He stayed for tea. The children were doing homework at the kitchen table. Hope was asleep in the small crib in the bedroom. They sat in low voices and talked, and at some point the conversation moved from small things to larger ones. "Can I ask you something?" Maya said. "Yes," Damien said. "Can you answer honestly?" Maya said. "There is no reason to lie to me." Damien smiled a little.
Yes, I can answer honestly, the way you do, Maya smiled. Why did you keep trying to find me? After the wallet, you had it back, everything was fine. Most people would have moved on. Damien wrapped both hands around his mug. Because I have spent a long time in rooms full of people who do things because there is something in it for them. What you did had nothing in it for you, nothing at all. It was just the right thing. And when I meet that, I do not let it go, not if I can help it. He paused. Also, I wanted to make sure you were all right. I knew you were homeless and pregnant. I could not just not know how that turned out. Maya was quiet for a moment. I found out who you were, 3 days after. Eli found a newspaper. Damien looked at her, and nothing, she said. I had already done what I did. It could not be undone, and I did not want to undo it. What you were worth did not change why it was the right thing to do. He studied her face. Most people, when they find out afterward what they gave back, feel regret or anger or like they deserve something. I am not most people, Maya said simply. In any way, I didn't give it back because of what was in it. I gave it back because it was not mine. That part was never about you. It was about who I want to be. Damien was quiet for a long time. Then he said, My mother would have loved that answer. Maya smiled into her mug. Tell me about her, she said. And so he did. And that was the night the door between them opened, not with drama or declarations, but with two people choosing, slowly and carefully, to tell each other the truth. It was quiet. It was unhurried. It was the beginning of something that did not need to announce itself, because the things that last never do.
Damien had a habit, when he was thinking through something important, of going for a long drive at night through the quieter parts of Crestfield. He would take the back roads that looped around the old industrial district and the university grounds, where the streets were wide and mostly empty, and the streetlights cast long yellow columns on the tarmac. He would drive without music, without calls, just him and the road, and whatever it was he needed to think about. In the weeks after meeting Maya, he took many of these late drives. He thought about her steadiness, the way she spoke, precise and unadorned, never more words than needed. The way she had stood on that construction site with a concrete block on her head, 8 months pregnant, and looked at him with exactly the same level expression she had brought to everything else. No performance of hardship, no bid for sympathy, just a woman doing what needed to be done. He thought about all the people he had met in boardrooms and at dinners and across negotiating tables who had presented themselves as strong, capable, unshakable, and how many of them had proven to be exactly none of those things the moment the pressure became real. He thought about how different Maya was from all of it, not because she was perfect, but because she was real, genuinely, entirely, quietly real. He thought about his grandmother and the note she left him, the one he carried in his wallet. She had written at the last Christmas she was well enough to come for dinner. It said, in her careful, old-fashioned handwriting, "The finest thing a person can be is themselves, fully, without apology. Everything else is noise." He had read it so many times that he had stopped reading the words and started simply feeling their weight. But lately, thinking about Maya, he was reading them again properly. He was, he recognized, falling for her. Not in the way he had fallen for people before, which had always been fast and warm and full of a momentum that eventually ran out. This was different. This was more like the way good architecture settles into a landscape, slowly, precisely, becoming impossible to imagine away. He did not say anything about it, not yet. He was content, for now, to show up and be present and let whatever was building between them build at its own pace. He had learned, over many years and many mistakes, that the things worth having are worth waiting for. And Maya Adeze, he thought, was something very much worth waiting for. In the months that followed Hope's birth, things changed, carefully, gradually, and in ways that felt earned rather than sudden.
Maya enrolled in an evening course in property management, supported through one of Damien's company's community education programs. She was sharp and determined and impressed her tutors within the first 3 weeks. Within a year, she was working in a junior role at a reputable property firm in Central Crestfield, managing client files and coordinating site inspections. Her knowledge of construction, learned the hard way, on her feet, carrying blocks, proving unexpectedly valuable in a field full of people who had only ever seen it on paper. Eli earned a partial scholarship to a secondary school on the north side of the city, the kind of school that once seemed as distant and impossible as another country. He still drew his imaginary cities in his spare time. His maps had grown more detailed, railway timetables, zoning plans, population density charts. His geography teacher told Maya at a parent evening that she thought he had an extraordinary mind. Maya came home and sat quietly for a while, and then called Damien to tell him, and her voice was so full of something she couldn't quite name that he sat on the other end of the phone, not saying anything for a moment, just listening to the shape of how she sounded. Nora grew bolder. She joined a painting class at the community center and began filling the walls of their flat with large, colorful canvases, the blue-doored house she had drawn for Damien appearing in various forms across multiple paintings, growing more detailed with each one, the garden expanding, the sky becoming more elaborate, the family of stick figures gradually taking on more recognizable features. Hope was healthy and growing fast, with her mother's dark eyes and an expression of focused interest that appeared on her face whenever she heard a new sound or saw a new shape. And Damien and Maya, they moved forward in the way that careful people do, slowly, honestly, without rushing the parts that needed time. He did not sweep her into some dramatic declaration. She did not make grand gestures or promises she wasn't sure she could keep. They both had been shaped by lives that had taught them the value of what is steady and what is true over what is loud and temporary. What they built between them was built the way good things are always built, on something real. On the evening of the anniversary of the day the wallet was found, Damien came to the flat for dinner, a meal that Maya cooked herself, the kitchen filled with the smell of something warm and complicated, Nora setting the table with the focused gravity she brought to all tasks, Eli attempting to explain to Hope, who was sitting in her bouncer with wide eyes, the fundamental principles of urban planning. After dinner, when the children had drifted to their rooms and Hope had fallen asleep in her crib and the washing up was done, Maya and Damien sat at the small kitchen table with mugs of tea, the way they had begun to do most evenings, sometimes talking, sometimes just sitting in the comfortable silence of two people who no longer felt the need to perform for each other. 1 year ago, Maya said, wrapping both hands around her mug, I was sleeping under a bridge. 1 year ago, Damien said, I dropped my wallet in a car park. She looked at him. If you had kept it, he said, I would have lost some money and some documents, very replaceable, very unimportant in the end. He looked at her steadily, and I would have never found you. Maya was quiet for a moment. My mother used to tell me that honesty costs you nothing you were really meant to keep. I didn't always believe it. There were moments, standing at that bollard, holding that wallet, where believing it was very hard. But you believed it anyway, Damien said. I tried, she said. That's all any of us can do. Just try. He reached across the table and put his hand on hers, briefly and without ceremony. She didn't pull away. Outside, Crestfield hummed with its ordinary evening sounds, distant traffic, a child somewhere calling out, the low murmur of the city going about its business, unchanged and unconcerned the way cities are. But inside that small kitchen, at that small table, something quiet, insignificant, and entirely real was continuing to be built, not with money or grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but with the only materials that have ever made anything that lasts: honesty, patience, and the willingness to see another person clearly. Maya had once whispered under a bridge, "One day things will change." They had. Not because a trillionaire appeared and rescued her, but because she had remained herself, fully, quietly, stubbornly herself, and in doing so, she had made herself impossible to overlook. If this story moved you, if something in Maya's steadiness, or in Damien's quiet search for something real, or in the small, uncelebrated miracle of choosing right when everything inside you is screaming to choose otherwise, then you understand what this story was really trying to say. Goodness is not rewarded every time. Honesty does not always lead to a changed life. The world does not often send a trillionaire to find the person who returned his wallet. Most of the time, you do the right thing and it goes unnoticed and unrewarded, and you do it again the next time anyway. But sometimes, just sometimes, the quiet choices you make when no one is watching, when everything is hard and nothing is certain, end up being the exact thing that changes everything. Maya didn't know that. She could not have known it. She was just a woman who believed in something her mother had told her, standing in a car park with a wallet full of someone else's money, choosing to do what was right. That was all, and it was everything. Thank you for reading this story all the way through. If it stayed with you, if it gave you something, please share it with someone who might need it today. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next, and until then, keep choosing well, even when it costs you, even when no one is looking, especially then.